Hello and welcome to another Toybox audio video demonstration video. I am Matthew and this is a deep dive video into the Atomic Oscillator, which is the flagship oscillator in our newly released Atomic Pack, which is good value. I recommend you go and buy it now because it has this oscillator in it, and I've never seen an oscillator like this. It is called an Additive FM oscillator. Those two words by themselves mean different things. FM means frequency modulation, one signal modulating another signal. And additive means constructed from simple pieces to become more. So we add, conventionally you add sine waves together to create a complex sound from different sine wave partials, which is kind of what we do here. But we also do FM. And rather than traditional FM, which is FMing the whole signal against another signal, or one whole oscillator against another whole oscillator, which is kind of what we do here, we are FMing all the partials, all the additive partials against all the other additive partials in the other oscillator. And also we can do a local feedback as well. So those two features alone, those two words, additive, FM, by themselves mean something cool and fun. Together, we've made them mean more than just those two words put together in a little algorithm. So what we've got, let's have a look at oscillator 1. This is the blue oscillator on the right here. And we'll just go around from the top and kind of look at what's going on here. So we've got how the oscillator is pitched. And there's a few different modes. Standard keyboard mode. We all know what that does. Play from a keyboard or from MIDI notes in your DAW. This is an LFO style sync. We wanted, I think all of our oscillators, we want them to be able to be used as LFOs as well as regular sort of, audio frequency oscillators. So we've got this function as well, which allows you to run these additive oscillators at super low frequencies, synced to tempos and that kind of thing. It's really good. I'll show you that kind of fun later on. There's also an input mode, which is for listening. You can send sources into the input, into C in 1 and in 2. That's oscillator 1 and in oscillator 2. And do some fun stuff with that. That's a kind of additive resynthesizer, so it will reconstruct the sound it hears, and you can do crazy stuff with that. I'll leave that for another video in itself, because that is a complex, different thing in its own right. And also we can make the oscillator just run via a certain frequency that we select. And never changes, obviously. Doesn't matter what note you press, it's the same frequency. But to keep things simple, we're going to go back to the keyboard mode and play a nice little major triad. So what we've got here is an additive oscillator. In its current form, we can see a sine wave, one single sine wave, and that's kind of what that looks like. Let's just turn all that off so they stop doing them. So we've got one frequency, we've got our simple sine wave, and its partial, its single partial, because a sine wave only has one partial, it's itself, and no other harmonics on top of it. And that partial is being constructed by another sine wave. So it's a very simple noise. These sine waves, the partial waves can be adjusted from here to here. There's a number of different noises you can assign to the partial, and that's probably one of the cool things about this particular partial, this particular additive synthesizer. And so, for example, let's just have a bit of fun. Let's recreate a saw wave. This is a saw wave constructed from sine waves. So if I increase the partial count, you'll see the detail increase up the top there. But also my CPU stepped up a little bit, so I'm just going to pull it down. We don't need those for the moment, because I'm going to add another load of high frequency content by doing this. I'm going to shift all the partials from a triangle to a square to a saw. So now we've got a complex waveform with nothing but the harmonics from a saw wave and the part of which the partials are formed by saw waves themselves. So there's a great richness to this sound. Let's just locally feed it back a little bit for fun, and we can sort of get some instant super saw stuff here as well. I kind of like that. Crazy. We can also change them to a saw wave or whatever kind of, a square wave, or this or that. And you can do the spready stuff, spread the sine waves, spread the partials up across the audio range, make them quite inharmonic and, I don't want to say ugly, because it's not ugly. And we can also push them all back down again towards the kind of fundamental, the root note. Kind of reminds me of that crazy iMac sound, is it? The massive, that massive sound. Anyway, and we can shift all the frequencies, including the bass frequency, up. And as you can hear, this is not a normal kind of pitch shifting operation. If it were, we wouldn't instantly get enharmonic stuff happening here. So what this operation is, it's an add operation. We're adding frequencies to the partials rather than multiplying them. When you multiply things, you maintain a relationship between all the partials, but we're adding, so the relationship between the partials is changing all the time as we change the knob. So the sonic signature of the sound changes. There's kind of sweet spots. There's a few, and obviously all this depends on the shape you're using using as your partial, and what shape you're using to kind of rebuild, to synthesize from those partials. So I keep going back to the local feedback. It's one of my favourite knobs in this machine. So that covers what the general additive stuff going on here. We've got a filter over here. What this filter is, it's not a conventional filter. It is a additive filter. It's an additive filter. And what it does is, rather than doing a kind of filter operation on the whole signal, it is applying maths to the partial set. So I can demonstrate this. So if you think about when a normal high resonating filter is passed through some rich frequency content, the resonating part of that signal highlights frequencies if they're there in the original signal, because of the nature of what an oscillating filter, self-resonating filter does. Now this isn't self-resonating because it's not a normal filter. What it is, it's, like I say, it's maths applied to the sound. So we've got this sound. If I turn the resonance up, you can see the spectra becomes slightly brighter at the top end. Now if I bring the filter down, it won't sound anything like a regular filter. I mean, you can hear it highlighting different partials. And that will change based on the shape we've got. So there's a bandpass filter as well you can use to do some crazy things. There's a high pass and a kind of couple of notches and stuff that do crazy things. But all these filter algorithms are doing is changing the volume of the partials in certain ways based on the shape of the filter that you want. So depending on the complexity, you'll get certain things happen. So if I make a more, because this is only one shape, we're not affecting the whole signal because we've only got one partial, and that partial is a saw wave. As soon as I make that signal more complex, the filter operation can be heard to do a lot more because there's more partials there for the filter to operate on. Isn't that crazy? So that's what that is. That's the filter. It's a crazy little thing. Well, let's open it fully up again and look at the other side. So to finish with, the FM knob on this side has 4 different modes. Traditional FM, like the X7 style phase modulation that you might normally find. Amplitude modulation. I don't need to explain these things. You can look them up. Ring modulation, similar to amplitude modulation, and a sample and hold mode, which is kind of holds a value until the other side of the operation crosses 0. It's quite a complex little sound. Have fun with that, though. I'm not going to focus on that. We're going to look at the other side and how these two oscillators interplay with each other, into kind of react to each other, I suppose. It's a reactor after all. So make sure we've got all feedback off there. I'm going to put these back to some sine waves, and let's just do some basic. So we've got the ratio here down to half, so we're half the frequency, so it's a kind of a bass noise. Let's just put it back to there for the moment. So that's regular, one single FM oscillating another sine wave, or one single oscillator FMing another single sine wave. So if I make this waveform more complex, you can hear it's changing the way that FM is running, but because we've only got one partial in this side of the operation, we're only responding to the first partial in this oscillator. So no matter how much I do that, all that's going to happen is the volume of the lowest oscillator, the kind of fundamental oscillator. As soon as I make this oscillator more complex by turning it into, say, a saw wave from sine waves, the FM operation starts doing a lot more on the partials rather than just the bass partial. And I can kind of prove this. I can turn the kind of root partial down. So this little screen is some option screens. We'll touch on them a bit closer in a minute. But what we can hear is there's now no bass note, and it would just respond. The FM on this side is just responding to all the partials on the other side. So not the bass note. Let's just make it a bit more complex, because complex is good. And let's just put this back up again, because we want our root partial there. So all the partials are FM'd against each other, which I just find a delightful, complex sound. Isn't it great? Let's FM a bit of that signal back into this one again. Oh yeah. We find that tipping point. So that's the two oscillators. Obviously this one as well is a fully additive oscillator. You can change the shape of the partials over here and just go crazy with all your subtle FM movements. I just like looking for instabilities. That's my... Nice sound there. Okay, let's look at one of the great features of this oscillator, which is the partial snapping function. Now, this is something that I believe Toybox introduced into some oscillators in the earlier packs from a few years ago. One was the Super Saw oscillator, and what we decided to do was add a function that allows you to force the super sawed kind of notes to scales. So no matter what note you press, you're always part of a scale. It's kind of makes playing music a little bit easier, because you can't really hit a wrong note. That wasn't really the intention, but it was a kind of a good interesting end result of the function itself. But we've got a similar thing in here, and what it enables you to do is, well, I will show, and I will watch and listen. So here is a saw wave generated from sine wave partials. So there's the saw there. Now, what we can do is each of those partials, let me show you this screen. So this is the little options screen I was at earlier. If we can change the volume of these partials, we can make the lowest one really quiet and change what we want. Make certain partials appear. And draw it like that in a way. And we can also like change the frequencies, make it completely change the shape of the intended additive shape by adjusting the frequency of each of the partials. Only lower, mind you. But then it's lovely instant ugly, which is always good to know how to get. But here's the magic. Okay, so here are the partials. You can't really hear them as notes. Let's make them notes. So this is set to a major scale, so all the partials have now been shifted to the nearest major note. And this is so much fun. What we can do, I'll go through these knobs now, because these top three knobs will be, you'll hear very clearly what we're doing. Formant, we can traverse through the harmonic series. There's some of that reminds me of some Kraftwerk stuff. We can shift all the frequencies up. Instant music. And obviously, because all the partials are sine waves, maybe make them triangle, veering towards a square. I think, pretty sure there's instant music on this knob here somewhere. Isn't that delightful? But then the spread knob changes the voicing of that cluster of harmonic partials that have been mapped to notes. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that sounds like Kraftwerk. So that we're very proud of. I think that's a great, beautiful feature. And with that, obviously, you can do it to the other side. So let's turn on the pitch mapping on the other side. Make sure we're on the same scale, major scale in the key of C, and of local. What happened then? unison buttons add, like, depending on the voice you've created, will do crazy things. That sounds a bit phasey at the moment. Flangey. And we've got this random changes the post. So one of the major points is that the shift and spread buttons shift and spread the partials, and the formant shift as well. Shift the partials prior to the partial quantized, so partial prior to the pitch quantizing of each of the partials. So that's why it kind of sounded like that. Whereas if I take it off, everything's in harmonic and strange. So that is really, I really like that as a I've never seen that in a synthesizer before. So I hope you have lots of fun with that as a feature. There's one last thing I wanted to show you, and that is the LFO syncing stuff. So let's just put ourselves back to a basic shape in a lot of these little knobs here, and switch them to. So let's use a weird shape. Now you won't hear much because you can hear that clicking. That's the sound of this particular waveform doing nothing. But what we can do is let's select some kind of complex waveform like that, and then apply. Let's make sure the timing of that is an interesting subdivision of what we've got here. So what's this set to? That's set to a bar, and we've got this set to a quarter of a bar. So where did that come from? Suddenly there's a machine about to pass. So this is the kind of other side of the FM world that I love. It's the sound effect side of it, which is can be quite clanky and ugly, depending on what you're going for. Stick a bit of distortion after it, you'll have a smile on your face. But that sounds like I love that. That's a machine there. Instant mechanics. Oh, something's happening. I think that rattles. That bit's going to fall off in a second. I can hear it. Probably turn it off. So let's just adjust some of this for a bit of fun. So if we switch the oscillators around, give them a more interesting shape to modulate against. Mm-hmm. See, this is the kind of stuff that you won't get in your regular FM, because we're FMing like multiple different partials together at the same time. It's like an old car. Oh, we're still tracking pitch. Still caught in a scale. Turn off. There you go. Well, I had fun. I hope you did as well. That basically covers a lot of the main functionality of these crazy oscillators that we've released. I will do another video about the live input because that is its own crazy beast and it requires a certain set of taming. Yeah, so have fun. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into our new Atomic Oscillator synthesizer, and I wish you a wonderful sound designy, making happy noises and also ugly noises day from this point onwards. Okay, thank you, goodbye.